Hello, and welcome to the Reykjavik News Desk. I'm Andy Sophia Fontaine, and these are the week's top stories in Iceland. If you like the content that you see here, be sure and like and subscribe. And if you really like the content that you see here, check out the Patreon link in the description below. But now, the week's top stories in Iceland. The öra is soon to be no more, at least in digital form. In the olden times, the öra was a fraction of a krona in coin format, and they made a lot more sense to have when you could buy something for less than a krona. Now you'll be lucky to find anything for less than 100 kroner. Now the physical version of the öra was taken out of circulation by 2003, but the digital version has lived on in the form of decimal values with electronic transactions. These will now be completely wiped out over the next few days, whether you're using PayPal or a credit card or debit card, where if there's any values that go over this decimal value, they'll just be rounded up to the next one. So this is truly the end of an era. In other news, in the early morning hours of April 12th, in Brazil, in an operation coordinated between the Icelandic police and the Brazilian Federal Police, Sverrir Gunnarsson was arrested. He is suspected of being one of the leaders of a massive drug ring based in Brazil. Interestingly, this was not Sverrir's first run-in with the law in Brazil. He was last arrested about 10 years ago and convicted for trying to smuggle 46,000 tablets of ecstasy. It is reported that this drug ring extends not only to Europe, but to Africa as well. And Icelandic police are a little bit cagey as to whether or not Sverrir's activities have had anything to do with drug activity in Iceland, but I mean, it's a pretty safe bet. If found guilty, Sverrir could face up to 40 years in prison. The Blue Lagoon will not ruin your hair. I repeat, the Blue Lagoon will not ruin your hair. There's been some TikTok videos circulating which are contending that after a visit to the Blue Lagoon, somebody's hair was permanently damaged by the waters at the Blue Lagoon. Now, I know this may be hard to believe when it comes to TikTok videos, but this information being contended is completely and totally false. In point of fact, the minerals that are found in the water and the mud of the Blue Lagoon, especially silica, are in fact good for your hair and your skin. Anecdotally, I used to work with a guy who had really bad psoriasis, and he was prescribed visits to the Blue Lagoon, where the mud actually did wonders for his psoriasis. Furthermore, if anecdotal evidence isn't enough for you, I've linked to a scientific paper which details the benefits that silica has for the skin and the hair. It's in the description below. Now, if you cannot afford to come to Iceland and or cannot afford to visit the Blue Lagoon, I put a link in the description to where you can buy skin and hair products that are made from the minerals in the Blue Lagoon. And no, they're not sponsoring me. They've just done wonders for my skin in the past. Next up, firefighters want more authority to inspect rental properties. Now, as I detailed in my video about bad landlords, firefighters are trying to get dozens and dozens of properties or rather property owners of these properties, to update these properties so that they're up to code or to close them down altogether because they're hazardous for people to live in and not fit for people to live in. Unfortunately, the firefighters don't have the authority to make inspections of these properties even if they've been tipped off that there may be a problem there. The Ministry of the Interior says that they are working on a bill which would give the firefighters the authority to conduct these inspections, and not a moment too soon. And lastly, puffins. They're back in East Iceland, and you can watch them live on a live stream that I've linked in the description below. That's it. That's the story. In any event, those are the week's top stories in Iceland. Again, if you like the content that you see here, be sure and like and subscribe. And if you really, really, really like the content that you see here, check out the Patreon link in the description below to see what kind of goodies you can get just by kicking a little extra coin our way. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marion Ward, Christopher Hunter, and Marion Moores for being patrons on the $20 level, Laura Johnson for being a patron on the $15 level, and Stephen Ellis and Vivek Carvalho Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. In any event, that's all I've got for you today. Be good to each other.